This tutorial is going to cover the Linux command line. The agenda for it is to cover basic command line usage along with the most common terminal commands. So notes about the Mac command line. All the commands in this slide deck will work on the Mac as well as on the Linux command line with some exceptions, and those will be noted. So this tutorial is being recorded on a Mac, and the Mac has a built-in terminal, but I like to use iTerm, which is what I'm using in this tutorial because I think it looks a little bit nicer. So before we begin, make sure that this is for if you want to follow along, make sure that you have the Linux examples folder in your documents folder, which will allow you to follow along as we walk through on the terminal. And open up a new terminal. This will have you defaulted inside of your tilde directory, which is where you want to begin for this walkthrough. So this will cover basic terminal. Anytime a command starts with a pound, it's a no-op, which means it won't do anything. This is useful for comments on bash scripts, which is a way to cluster a lot of commands together to run in sequence. The up arrow, when used in the terminal, will let you go back and look at the previous commands that you've run. As you go up, it'll go through the previous commands, and as you go down, it will go the other direction through the commands. So it's a way to go back through commands you've used previously if you've just done something really complex, you don't want to have to retype. History will print out a list of the previously used commands to the terminal. So if I do history, these are the commands that I've run previously in this terminal. And if it gets really long, like, it could be thousands of commands long because it's just been recording what you've been doing for however long you've been using the terminal, you can do history-c, and that will clear your history. So the next time you run history, it just shows history, and from that point forward, it'll keep recording what you've done. Clear will completely wipe your terminal, so you have a clean slate, which is nice if you just done something that basically pukes onto your screen and you don't want to have to see it anymore. So man is short for manual, and this will give you a look at how to use certain commands. So if I do man history, this is the manual for history, and as you can see, it gives me a description as well as any flags that I might be able to use, that sort of thing. So to get out of the history, you do Q for quit, and now I'm back to my terminal. So echo is a way to print something to your terminal, and it's used like echo hello world, and it just prints to the screen. This is again useful in a bash script if you want to keep the user up to date about what your script is doing along the way. Control-C is used to stop whatever command is currently running in your terminal. So if you have just run a Java program that you figured out as an infinite loop, you could stop it in the middle, or if you have a long-running script that's deploying something, you could stop it in the middle. Or if you've just run a command that takes over your terminal for some reason, you can hit Control-C. It can be very useful as you get more comfortable using your computer and you're doing longer and longer running things. So Control-Shift-C will copy something from your terminal if you're on a Linux, and on a Mac it would be Command-C. So I'm going to highlight Hello World, and since I'm on a Mac, do Command-C. And it can be useful if you're trying to do something like Google an error you just got. And then Control-Shift-V on a Linux machine will paste to the terminal, but since I'm on a Mac, I'm going to do Command-V, which to paste, which can be useful if you just Googled a way to do something complicated or cool. So I'm going to delete that since it's not a real command. To note, if you do type in something that's not a real command, you'll get told that we've just done isn't a real command, which can be helpful. So Control-R will do a search of the commands that you have previously run on your computer. So, and it does it incrementally. So if I start typing in history, I can see the commands that I've run previously on my computer. And as I keep typing Control R, it will go back through the different commands that I've run. And this is skipping back through your history. So if you've recently cleared your history with history -C, you won't be able to get very far back. And if you hit enter, it will rerun that command that you just found. So sudo, which I say is short for super user do, will allow you to run commands you wouldn't be normally allowed to do. So it's run like sudo something privileged, can't even spell that word, something special. So this is anything that would normally take admin rights to do, and after you do the sudo command, it will ask for your password. And after you give it, it will allow you to run whatever command you would previously not be allowed to run. SSH, which is short for Secure Shell, is a way to get into a terminal session for a computer other than your own. And it's run like SSH hostname at IP address. And this works natively on Macs and Linux machines. And if you're going to want to do it on a Windows machine, you're going to need to use PuTTY. The Windows command line is very different from Linux and Mac. It has an entirely different set of commands through the command line. So pretty much nothing on this tutorial would work on a Windows machine. WinSCP is a way to transfer files between computers on Windows, and it can be really useful if you have a Windows machine and you're trying to transfer files from a computer lab or a work machine onto your Windows machine. There's also a secure shell extension for Chrome that you can use. It will give you basically a terminal in Chrome, which is nice. So exit will close out of a terminal window. I'm not going to do it now because it'll mess up this nice split screen that I have, but it's helpful if you have multiple tabs open in the same terminal and you want to get out of a couple of tabs quickly without having to move your mouse around a lot. Okay, so this next set of slides is about the directories and the files through the command line. Okay, so a couple of vocab things. A directory is just another word for a file. A path is information that goes before a file or directory that means it lives somewhere besides the current directory. So if you're inside of documents and you want to touch something inside of pictures through the command line, you would give it a path before the file name to indicate that it's in pictures and not in documents. So a period is the current directory, and 2 periods is the directory above the current one. A relative path is a path that's calculated from the current directory. So for an example would be documents/Linux examples. This would work if you were in your tilde directory. And then an absolute path is a path that's calculated from the base directory and always begins with a slash. An example would be /users/mavery/documents/Linux examples. Okay, so as a note for the notation for the rest of the slides, anytime it says source or destination, that could be a file or directory with or without a path. And anytime it says file, that can be a file with or without a path. Okay, clear the screen. So ls, which is short for list, gives you a list of all the files and directories in the current directory. So if I do ls, it gives me a list of commands, or it gives me a list of directories and files. You'll notice that mine are color-coded, and that's because of something that I have set up in the configurations in my bash profile, which is something that'll be covered in another tutorial. This right here, the SL is for Steam Locomotive, which is downloaded on some machines, which can be fun. I don't think I have it on mine. I don't, but what it does is it does an ASCII train that goes across the screen from right to left. You can also call ls on a directory other than the current one by doing ls and then directory name. So I'm going to do documents. And this gives me a list of the files and directories that are inside documents. You can also do ls-l, which will give you a list of files along with permissions and some other information. So if I do ls-l, these are all of my directories and files along with their permissions, their size, the owner, the group they're in, a different way of looking at their size, and then their modified date. So this first character here is whether or not it's a directory. The next three characters are their permissions for the owner, read, write, or execute. The next three are for the group, and the three after that are for anyone who could get access to the file through like SSH or SCP, anything like that. So as you can see, my public has read and execute for both the group and anyone else. And then this linux.cast file has read permissions for the group and anybody else. So it's a good way to figure out who would have access to your file potentially. So PWD is short for print working directory. And it's an easy way to figure out where you are in the file hierarchy if you've forgotten. Tab is a way, will autocomplete whatever you're currently doing in the terminal. So I could do oops, that's not what I wanted to do. I could do ls doc tab, and it'll autocomplete doc to documents. If I have something that has multiple options, like P, I can double tab to get the potential options. So that could be helpful. Okay, clear my screen. CD is short for change directory, and it's a way to navigate between directories in your file structure. So I can do cd documents /Linux examples, and now I'm inside of the Linux examples directory. So that was CD. Now make dir, which is short for make directory, is a way to make a new directory for you. So I can do make dir secrets, and now I have a new directory named secrets inside of my Linux examples directory. You can also use relative or absolute paths for the directory name. So if I wanted to do make dir secrets top secret, now I have a secrets. Now I have a top secret directory inside of my secrets directory. So I'm going to cd into secrets. So CP is short for copy, and it's a way to copy something into a different directory. So if I want to copy secret message from the directory above this one into this one, the destination is always required, even if it's the current directory, so I'm going to put a period. And now I have secret message inside of my secrets directory. Now, this copy has made two distinct versions of this file now. There's one inside of my secrets directory, and there's one in my parent directory here, secret message. If you want to copy entire directories around, you have to use the -r flag, with R for recursive, so this will copy the directory and everything inside of it to where you around. So SCP stands for secure copy. It's a way to copy files between computers, and it's used like SCP source destination, where the source and destination are either a file on your file or directory on your computer, or a place on another computer. So it's used like scp host at, to go from your computer to another, it's used like scp host at IP :source/file name space destination on your computer. And then to go from your computer to another, it's scp source or file name host at IP :destination on the other computer. So this part that goes after the colon is required to have an absolute path on it so that it knows exactly where to go or come from on the other computer. So touch is a way to either make a new file if it doesn't already exist or update the last modified time on a file. So if I do touch new secret.txt, now I have new secret.txt inside my current directory. For this, you can touch any file that you want, but when creating a new one, it's best to stick to files that you could edit in a text editor, like text, CSVs, Java files, because if you did something like touch a PDF, it doesn't really make sense, because what does it mean to have a completely empty PDF? So just be aware of that as you're using this command. So mv is short for move, and it's a way to actually move files around. So it keeps one copy of the file or directory and just takes it and changes where it lives. And it's used like move source destination. So this is going to move the top secret file into the top secret directory. So if I ls where it came from, top secret no longer lives there. It lives inside of top secret. Okay, so cat is short for concatenate, and it will print a file's contents to the terminal. So if I do cat secret message.txt, it says to burn after reading. So now I need to delete this file. So rm is short for remove, and it deletes a file. And this doesn't delete it like if you moved it to the trash from your file GUI. It is completely gone. There's no way to recover it. So be very careful when using this command, because there's also not natively a check for it. It just goes ahead and does the command. In the tutorial for the bash RC, I'll show you how to put in an are you sure check, but from the base version, it just does it. And it's used like remove the name of the file. So now secret message is gone. You can also delete entire directories with rm-rf directory name, which will delete the directory and everything inside of it. The R stands for recursive and the F stands for force. And be very careful with this, because if you don't put a destination name, it will just start deleting everything from your current directory down. It'll do it very quickly, and then a lot of work will be gone. This actually happened when they were creating Toy Story 2 or 3, and the only reason that they didn't delete the entire movie and have to start from scratch was because somebody had it backed up on their home computer because they were on maternity leave. So just careful when using remove. So chmod is a way to change the permissions on a file. So if we look at, an example of removing a directory would be rm-rf top secret. So now that's completely gone. So chmod is for changing permissions, and it's used like chmod new settings, the destination, so file or directory you want to change the permissions for. So an example would be chmod. Looking at the permissions for new secret, we can see that others can read it as well as the group, and I want only myself to be able to read and write it. So I'm going to do chmod others minus read for the new secret. And now you can see that the R went away. And I can also do chmod group minus read new secret. And you can see that the R went away for the group set of permissions as well. So another vocab alert, regex is short for regular expression, and it's a way of doing custom word matching. So a simple example, some of the simple usage would be an asterisk, which is a wild card, and it'll match anything. So if I were to do something like example star, this would match anything with the word example, and then anything after that. A question mark is 0 or more occurrences, so it is an optional thing to be part of whatever you're matching. A plus is 1 or more occurrences, and this little bar here is an or, and it's not an L, it's the symbol that's above the backslash on your keyboard. And then parentheses are used to group part of the query. So none of these symbols are things that you can actually search for natively. If you want them to be part of your search and not part of a regular expression, you have to put a backslash before them. There's more information about this on the Wikipedia page for regular expression. Okay, so grep is, let me get back to Linux examples. Grep is a way to search through files. So you do grep and then a search query and a file name. So I'm going to do grep example in example.txt. And it gives you a line-by-line readout in the file where those things occur. So this is the only line in example.txt where the word example exists or appears. And so some helpful flags are grep-in example in example.txt. So this gives me a line number in the file where example occurs. -r is short for recursive, and that'll search recursively, so from the current directory down. And then a star, instead of a file name, will search the entire directory. So if I do grep-in example.txt, sorry, that's supposed to be an asterisk, example asterisk, now this gives me where example appears in any of the files in the current directory. So it appears in these 3 files at their first line. And then this message is telling me that I can't grep secrets because it's a directory. So if I put a -r in, I no longer get that message because that R meant that it went inside of secrets and searched all of its files and was not able to find the word example there, which is why there's no 4th line in this grep output. Okay, so I'm going to go back up to documents. So find is a way to figure out where a file lives in your file hierarchy, and it's used like find path -name file. So if I do, and path here is optional, and if you don't give it, it'll just search from the current directory down. So if I do find name example.txt, this is a path to example, so I know where it is in my file structure. I can also use a regular expression for my file name. So if I do find name example star, these are all the files or directories that match example star. So I have 3 files that start with the word example in my Linux examples, and a directory here that is called examples. So I'm going to go back into Linux examples. Diff is used to show the difference between 2 files. So and it's used like diff file1, file2. So I can do diff example.txt, example2.txt. So this output is a little bit hard to read the first couple of times that you look at a diff output, but this hex is some information about where in the file the difference is occurring, and this greater than symbol means that this is a line that exists in example 2 but not in example 1, because example 2 is on the right and example 1 is on the left. Some other useful flags for diff are -b, which will ignore the white space in the diff, -I, which will ignore case, and this -- side by side, which will see the differences side by side. So head shows only the beginning of a file based on the number of lines you give it as input. So I can do head -5 Alice in Wonderland, and this will just give me the first 5 lines of Alice in Wonderland. And tail will only show the end of a file based on the number of lines of input. So I can do tail -5 Alice in Wonderland, and that'll just give me the last 5 lines of that file. So these are the Java commands. I'm just going to clear my screen. So Java version gives you the Java version that your computer is currently using. So for me, I'm using 1.8.0. If you run Java version and you get a different message, it'll give you something along the lines of Java's not installed, blah, 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 and then you can just go online and download the Java runtime environment onto your machine. So that's Java version. Java-C is used to compile your program, and it's run like Java-C file, and that file has to include a .java extension. So I can run Java-C needs input.java. And since I got no output, that means my program compiled successfully. And if I look at my list of files, there's now a needs input.class file. To run a Java program, it's just Java and then the name of the file without the extension. So it would be Java needs input. So this is a program that just waits for user input, or waits for user input forever, or if it hits an end of file character, it'll stop. So if I can do A, hello world, B, and it'll just keep repeating back to me what I give it. So since this is an infinite program, I'm going to do Control-C to stop it. So this next set of commands are redirection and input-output. So this again is a pipe. It's not an L. It's that symbol above the / character on your keyboard. So the usage is command 1 pipe command 2, and it takes the output from command 1 and makes it the input for command 2. And you can chain this together as many times as you like. So an example would be man history grep-in-the. So this is a list of all the times, make my output a little smaller. This is a list of all the times in the manual for history that the word the exists. And you can keep chaining these together as many times as you would like. So I could do this same pipe again with pipe into tail -2. So this is a list of the number of times that the word the appears in the history manual, but only the last 2 times it appears. And you can chain these together as many times as you want, as long as the output for the command on the left makes sense as the input for the command on the right. So a greater than symbol or a double greater than symbol is used to take the output for a command and pipe it into a file. So a single greater than will replace the contents of a file or create one if the file doesn't already exist, and a double greater than will append to the end of the file or add on to the end of it. So if I do something like cat example.text to from redirector.text, you can see that the contents matches. And if I do cat example2 with, again, just a single greater than symbol, it's replaced the contents. But if I do a double greater than, now it's just added on to the end of it. So this is something to keep in mind as you're building up maybe output from a couple different commands in a row, or using this inside a bash script potentially. Okay, so this less than symbol redirects the contents of a file as input for the command. It doesn't make it command line arguments to like a Java program. It uses every word in the file as if it were user input to the command. So an example of this would be that needs input, which is expecting user input, and then I'm going to give it example.text. So it printed it out one word at a time as expected, and it also stopped because it hit an end of file character. Okay, so now for some fun stuff. Cal will give you a little ASCII calendar of the current month with the current day highlighted. My computer doesn't highlight the current day, but most Linux machines will, and I have friends whose day is highlighted on their Mac. So I'm not sure why mine doesn't highlight the current day. There's also date, which will print out the current date string. So day, time, time zone, year. And then yes will print the same phrase repeatedly in your terminal until you hit Control-C. So I can do yes, hello world, and it would just keep going. So this is actually a useful command. Let's say you're about to run a download script or something that you know is going to ask you yes or no over and over, and you want to just say yes every time. You could do yes, y, piped into the command that you're about to run. Okay, so calsay is a fun program that will print some words like a cow is saying them. So you can do calsay hello world. You can also use it on to pipe like grep output into having a cow say it. And there's also a list of other animals you could get for it to print your words into. So you could do calsay-l, and these are all the potential animals that I could use. So to get a different animal, you use the -f flag. So calsay-f, dragon and cow, hello world, and there's a dragon. So there's also a couple of other fun flags you can do. So like if you do calsay/-d, it's a dead cow, and you can figure all this out from the calsay man page. The end. So I mentioned this earlier, but you can use exit to get out of your terminal. And yeah, I hope that was informative.